Welcome back to r/Neighbors from Hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors. And if you are new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. And the first one is titled, "Downstairs Neighbors Won't Be Quiet? Have Fun Getting Evicted." So this happened December of 2019. I live in an older apartment with my mom on the top floor, and for reference she lives in the den of our suite, which is important. At the beginning of December, a couple of young foreign college guys move into the suite below ours. It quickly became clear that they did not care about the concepts of respect and responsibility, whether it be from lack of understanding or simple rebellious behavior. They are barely in for a day when they started playing music at maximum volume late at night, sometime after 10 PM. We just stomped on the floor, but that did not stop them. So we just called the police to talk with them, and that did seem to stop them for the first night. They had quickly settled into a routine of getting up between 3 and 4 PM and heading off to classes, and then returning by around 10:30 to 11 PM, having obviously spent some time with friends. Unfortunately, this was not the end of their day. Once they were home, they would thunder around the suite as though they were wearing lead-lined boots, slamming cupboard doors as hard as possible and crashing their furniture around the apartment. In general, they were trying to be as noisy as possible. They also smoked enough weed you could be forgiven for thinking they were burning a pot store's full inventory each night, to the point where it was seeping up into our suite. It should be noted that smoking weed is forbidden in our building, and new tenants are informed of this before they are permitted to rent. They also tended to get into conversations that were effectively shouting matches. These conversations were conducted in the den space directly under my mother, thus keeping her awake every night. We had already been trying to report the matter to the manager of the building, who was being less than cooperative. We were told to simply start writing down all the incidents with times and descriptions of the offending actions, which we did. A full 2 pages long by the time we handed it in after Christmas. After a couple more nights of this and another call to the police, when it was clear that talking to a pair of baked young men would not accomplish anything, the two of them came up to us and tried to make peace, asking us if we would just call down to them or knock on their door and they would tone it down. This was an outright lie, as we discovered. December 23rd rolls around and I've gotten off a closing shift at work, returning after 11 PM, ready for the holidays. I am told that they've been making excessive noise again out on their patio, so I head out and ask them to keep it down, to which they said they would. 1 hour later and they are making even more noise. I head back out and tell them to be quiet. At this point they try an excuse at me, and starting with, "Let me tell you why we are doing this. We are..." That's as far as he gets before I cut him off. I tell him point blank that they are making too much noise when there is a noise curfew in effect by 11 PM and that they do not have any excuse for making that kind of racket. They retreated inside and were quiet for that night. Needless to say though, our Christmas was ruined by them. Fortunately, after sending some letters to the upper management, things started to roll in our favors as our building manager went around to the nearby suites, who had thus far remained quiet because they didn't want to be that person, and asked about the disturbances. Every single one of them confirmed exactly the same details that we had given about the problem renters. This got them their first eviction warning. Cut to 10 days later, first week of January, they are still making a racket each night. Just 1 day after they get their second eviction warning, they come home drunk at the usual time, crashing around the hallways of the building, yelling and screaming. The police are called again and they are forced to retreat to their suite. In pure rage, they crash around inside their suite until morning. That same evening, I happen to be looking out my bedroom window and glance down at their suite windows. It is at this moment my heart practically leaps from my chest. They have smashed an inner window pane in their suite, which can only really be seen from my bedroom. I make a very gleeful call to the upper management's office and report it. The following day by noon, they've been served their eviction notice. Turns out the manager had to inspect the damage from inside the suite and discovered they were acting like a wrecking crew. Counters were smashed. I could hear them slamming heavy metal against the bathroom counters repeatedly one night. The window needed replacement, and there were obviously going to be holes from the way that they had violently been throwing their furniture around, in addition to the stench of weed that had been infused into the walls. Thankfully, only 2 weeks later, they were gone. Of course, I have not been privy to any further information on the matter, but it goes without saying that they were in for a lawsuit for the excessive damage they had done. Sweet justice. And guys, I would love to hear from you. Have you ever had any super noisy, entitled neighbors? Let us know in the comments, and while you're at it, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe to my channel if you enjoy my content, and also post some star emojis in the comments to show your support. Thank you so much in advance. And the next one is titled, Entitled Neighbor Tries to Hire My Cat. This is not nearly on the level as some of the stories on here, but it is still one of the most baffling experiences I've ever had. So this happened several years ago. I think I was about 12. We lived in a pretty quiet neighborhood with a pretty even mix of families and retirees. This story involves the latter. We had an indoor/outdoor cat, more indoor than out, named Tiger, who would roam for a couple hours every day and then spend the rest of his time indoors. My dad really disliked having a cat, but was not mean to him, save for calling him a dumbass every now and then. This relationship is mildly important later on. This lady lived across the street, and when me and my dad were walking toward the pond behind the neighborhood so I could catch frogs, she caught our attention as we passed. EB, which is actually the woman, the entitled neighbor.
Hey, does it get mice?
I was and kind of am incredibly shy, and my dad handled it. Dad, come again? EB.
The cat, does it hunt mice?
Dad, he's a cat, ma'am. He was probably picturing the number of presents Tiger had brought us throughout the years when he said this, so it was essentially a yes. EB.
Can I get him over here sometimes? I got mice.
She was still shouting. We really were not far away enough to justify it. Dad, he's a cat, ma'am. He's not gonna come catch a mouse for you. She rolled her eyes, complete with a pfft and a frustrated hand wave. We walked off when she went back into her house, and I caught 3 tadpoles which all died because F me, I guess. A few days later, Tiger did not come home from one of his outings. I'd been a strong advocate for not letting him outside because it was not safe, so immediately all of the worst case scenarios entered my brain and would not leave. I even yelled at my mom, the person who let him out the most, because
he loves it so much, he will be safe.
As much as I love Tiger, I was always skeptical of his survival skills because his only benefit in the intelligence department was that he was not overburdened with an abundance of it. But I trusted my mom and I waited. By day 2, I was losing my mind. Night 3 was when my dad came inside after getting home from work. I was curious as to why he had taken so long, because I'd heard his car squeaky brakes like 15 minutes before, but I realized that he had come in holding Tiger. He never touched any cats. I think from the way they groomed themselves, he thought they were just always covered in their own spit. I did not even question it. My brother and I were overjoyed, and my mom asked where he found him. Dad, the woman across the street had him. Apparently the conversation a few days before had been an honest-to-God inquiry. She had somehow gotten him to come to her, probably with food, and then took him inside because she
needed him for the mice.
But hey, she was apparently planning on giving him back once he took care of her issue. Luckily, it had been garbage day, so when the lady opened her front door, Tiger effing booked it across the street, and the only reason Dad was carrying him was because this woman was chasing after him because he was not done with the mice. I don't remember if he repeated much of the dialogue that must have been exchanged, but I do remember him saying he told her, "The only thing more stupid than this cat is you." And honestly, I believe him. Well, to be honest guys, that turned out much better than I would have expected. And that reminds me, maybe half a year ago or so, I think I was in the car with my girlfriend and I was saying like, "Oh look, there's a very cute cat on the side of the road." Then my girlfriend parked the car and we took a closer look, and as it turned out, the cat had just eaten a mouse or something and her whole mouth was bloody. And there were like bits and pieces of meat hanging off her mouth. I love cats, but that was really a horror moment if you ask me. But I guess that is just the reality of outdoor cats. And the last one is titled EM calls the cops on me for trespassing on my own land, gets evicted. The cast is me, EM typical entitled cow, Frank, unlucky neighbor, previously UN before the edit, the owner of EM's house and the father of EM's baby daddy. Grandfather, an 83-year-old farmer who takes no crap, and cops number 1, 2 and 3. Backstory: for most of my life I was raised by my grandfather. Nothing was wrong with my family life or anything, just a few sets of circumstances. That's a whole other story in itself. We live in a suburban area surrounded by woods, and he owns about 10 acres into the woods with the boundaries clearly marked by stone walls. One of these stone walls separated my grandfather's land from a cul-de-sac, and up until now we've had zero problems with any of them. In fact, my grandfather was usually more than happy to give permission to neighbors who politely asked him to use his land given they had a good reason. One of these neighbors had asked my grandfather if he could dump the sticks and leaves in his yard over the stone wall. My grandfather agreed, as he rarely uses that part of the property anyway. This will be important later. My grandfather is very healthy for his age and still strong as an ox. That being said, he has a few minor health issues, including vertigo spells, so I've been trying to help him around the yard more and more, so as well as just to stay active outside away from crowds with this virus going around. Recently I've started the project of cleaning up the underbrush around the wooded area. A large pine had fallen a few months before and almost hit one of the porches in the cul-de-sac. My grandfather cut up the tree and removed the pieces in the neighbor's yard, but it was too deep in the woods to pull them out with the tractor. This led to me going back to that pine tree and trying to clear a path back to the house from there. I was behind the stone wall cutting and pulling up saplings when I hear the glass door of the cul-de-sac house open and an angry lady storming out onto the porch in a bathrobe. She was much younger than a typical Karen, I would say mid-20s. EM:
What are you doing here? You cannot be here.
Me, why not? EM:
Because you're trespassing, dumbass. You think you can just hang out in the woods behind my house with my kids inside? Get the F out of here before I call the cops.
At this point I'm just looking at her, trying to figure out what to say. I mean, I get it, it can be a little weird seeing someone in the woods behind your house if you haven't seen them before. Me: Ma'am, I'm sorry if I scared you, but my family owns this part of the woods. I'm just cleaning up back here. Remember, me and my grandfather were back here a few months back to take care of that tree that fell down. I just need to clear a path so we can get it out of here. At this point I thought it was purely a misunderstanding. EM:
Don't be ridiculous. Those were laborers my boyfriend's dad hired. You don't own the land. My boyfriend's dad owns all of this.
Gestures with her hand.
Now I tell you one more time to get out before I call the cops.
Now I am thinking I might be dealing with a genuine idiot, as outside our property boundaries the woods are owned by the town water plant and don't have public access. But I am also taken aback that she referred to us as laborers. Me: Guess you're going to have to call the cops then, because I ain't moving. I don't care what you, your boyfriend or your boyfriend's dad says. I shrug as I lean back against the wall and pull out my phone to call my grandfather to tell him where I was. He tells me he will be there in a few minutes and to hang tight. She then dramatically proceeds to call 911 and tells them there is a shady individual on her property refusing to leave and she's afraid for her life. I start getting nervous at this point, even though all I have on me is a hooked branch cutter. So I call up the police non-emergency number, briefly explain the situation as just a land dispute that got out of hand and that I am unarmed and waiting on my own property and that I have never left my own property. He assured me that it would be settled when the officers arrive, which did not help my nerves. Just then I hear my grandfather pull up and see him walking through the yard towards us. EM:
What? Stay back, you cannot come in my yard.
Grandfather growls: Keep your mouth shut, you dumb broad. He growled as he walked over to me and climbed over the wall so he was on my side. Grandfather: Now who the hell do you think you are? And why are you yelling at my granddaughter? EM:
My boyfriend's dad owns all this, and both of you are going to get arrested for trespassing.
My grandfather let out a dramatic, indignant laugh. Grandfather: Oh, did he tell you that? Well, you're in for quite the shock, and your boyfriend's dad is in for quite the talk. After them yelling back and forth for a few minutes, 2 cop cars pull up and 3 officers come walking into the yard. As soon as they do, she starts screaming again about how we have no right to be in the woods behind her house where
we can see her kids inside.
Cop number 1 looks to G. Sir, do you own the property behind this wall? Grandfather, yes sir, I do. Pulls out his wallet to show his address. Cop eyeing his license. Sir, this address is for down the street. Me, correct, but if you look on Google Maps, it shows the property boundaries of that address reach out through the woods and end at this wall. I hand him my phone, which already has Google Maps open, showing our exact location within the boundary of the property. Cop number 2, yep, she's right. So what were you all doing back here, if you don't mind me asking? We explained the situation of the tree and how we were working to remove the remnants. Meanwhile, the other officer was taking a statement from EM. Grandfather, I know the owner of this house. He's a good guy. I give him permission to dump his leaves and stuff behind the wall, but I've never seen her before, so I don't know where she got those crazy ideas. But I'm definitely going to have a talk with Frank when he gets home. Cop number 1, she already called him up and he's on his way now. Do you mind sticking around for a little until he gets here? Grandfather, sure, we got nothing to do. The cops walked us to my grandfather's truck where we waited about 10 minutes for Frank to pull in. When he did, he immediately walked over to the truck. Frank, grandfather's first name. OP, what's going on? Someone was hiding out in the woods? Are you okay? Did you see him? To clarify, we've had an issue in the past with people running from cops and hiding in our woods. It took a second for us to realize he thought that maybe EM saw one and we came to chase him out. Me? Not exactly. At this point 2 cops are around us again, but being 2 old guys who obviously pose zero threat, they are noticeably relaxed and kind of let them talk it out. Frank explains that EM is his granddaughter's mother and his son had made some mistakes and currently both were staying with him while they tried to find a place of their own. He thinks maybe his son told some lies to make him look better. Grandfather, well, I hate to say it, but your son made some big mistakes. She's crazy. Frank, oh, you have no idea. The other cop is still talking to EM, who won't stop screaming about not wanting us being able to see into the living room, especially my grandfather,
creepy old man.
My blood is boiling at this point. My grandpa is the type of person who would gladly throw his life away to save a child, any child, even a stranger's. Frank heard this too and ordered EM inside at once. He told the cops he needed to have a talk with both her and his son about their living situation, but they might want to remain nearby in case she tries to call again for whatever reason. Me and my grandfather are given the clear to go but leave our contact information. Found out later that week that EM was getting evicted for a number of reasons, with this little incident being the last straw. He's also filing for custody of his granddaughter because EM refuses to get a job yet still has money for weed, yet keeps asking Frank for money to take care of his granddaughter. I really feel bad for her in this situation, but I have no sympathy for EM whatsoever, entitlement at its best. And Ripe Stars, I would just like to once again remind you, because we have reached the end of the video, if you haven't already, please click the bell icon to not miss any of my future uploads, because currently YouTube rarely suggests my old videos or my new videos to my existing subscribers anymore. In addition, please tell me if you enjoyed the Neighbors from Hell stories today, because they are from a different source than usual. And guys, unfortunately we have already reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's stories, and if you haven't already, please also go to patreon.com/ripeyoutube, where I upload exclusive Reddit videos starting at just $3 a month. This is a great way to support me in case you are interested, and the chance for me to become independent from YouTube revenue. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and like the video, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.